Good afternoon. Are you ready for round two?
Oh, okay, don't.
Or three, I guess, actually, if you count last night. And again, we welcome you to our Virginia conference. I think this is the 94th consecutive conference of the Virginia Churches of God. So again, we welcome you and present Sir Anthony Mosby.
Okay, thank you, sir. I need to put this thing switched on, right? Is that right? You take
Yes.
part of it, you do that part, then I can do it. Yeah? Okay, John,
There we go.
All right. You guys are pretty patient putting up with all this talk. Anybody want to say something by way of protest? Disagreement? Agreement? Anything? Yes.
Not protest or agreement, but you know the verses you referenced?
Yes,
It should either be on a handout or on
they should be.
the wall.
They should be. PowerPoint. Can you do that, Carlos, for us?
Not right now.
Yeah, I know you're right. But you've got the memorize. You've got 1316, 17, 1316, 812, 1422, 198, 1908, 20, 24, 25, and 28, 30, 31, 23, 31. Right, you've got them all there. If you do this a few hundred times with your neighbors, you're going to know these. That's what you do. You do this by practice. People say, well, how do I go fishing for people? You try it out. And every fish is different. But that makes sense to me to prove that Paul did not abandon the same gospel that Jesus preached. Isn't that brilliant? That's so easy. But out there, the system is wrong. We've got quotes, innumerable quotes, where they say, the teaching of Jesus, they said, James Kennedy said, some people think the teaching of Jesus is important. That's not true. He said, quote, he said, that's not true. What really counts is that God came and died for you. That's what counts, but not the teaching of Jesus. I'm saying that's a false prophet. Watch out. That's going to put you outside the kingdom if you believe nonsense like that. Something like that. Okay, well, thank you for your patience. Now I'm going to move then, we've done the kingdom text, and with John's permission, we're going to move to Matthew 24 and 25. We've done the kingdom text. You've got them all. That will straighten your neighbors out. Okay. Anyone want to say anything else at all? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment
Yes.
about what's all contained within the kingdom.
Yes.
And I do agree with baptism, the water baptism.
Of course you do.
So it's not anything. And sometimes I wonder if enough emphasis is put on what this is symbolic of. It's symbolic of a godly sorrow,
You're talking about baptism now or the kingdom?
of repentance,
Oh, repentance.
which is part of the kingdom.
Yeah,
Because God's provided everything, but we have to repent.
of course we do.
And so with a godly sorrow, that's when God himself lays our heart open.
Yeah.
And not just about what we're doing wrong, but even about what truth is.
Oh, absolutely.
And when that happens,
Absolutely.
that's when we start to turn around. And repentance, there is a transformation.
Oh, absolutely. Changing your mind in every sense. That's why Mark 1:14 is so important, right? Jesus starts by saying, repent and believe in the gospel of the kingdom. That's brilliant.
But I was just thinking, sometimes I just wonder, do we realize what a big decision
Yeah.
true repentance
Oh, it's
is? And maybe that's why we're not seeing sometimes the result. You can get into the process of doing
Yeah. Yeah.
but not the true godly repentance.
That
Because
may be.
what Jesus said was required to be one.
Well,
of
evangelicals out there generally say repentance is a work, you don't have to do it. They write that. I've got to go back. All right. So they say repentance is a work. We know salvation is by grace and not by works, they say. Salvation then cannot involve repentance. What? Jesus said you are to repent and believe the gospel of the kingdom. That's where we start. That's Mark 1:14-15. That's from Peter. You know, Mark's gospel reflects the teaching of Peter. So that's straight from Peter, Jesus' mouth. That's easy. Total change of mind. We're only here because of the gospel. I hope that doesn't sound grandiose. What in the world am I doing? What state are we in? Is this Virginia? What's that? We should be back in England. We're not. So this gospel, because we're Bible nerds, has gripped us to the point of saying, let's find out who in the world believes in one God, in the gospel of the kingdom, hopefully in non-violence. I don't recommend you kill your enemies even, much less your fellow Christians. That's another subject. But who is there in the world that believes that? We didn't know of anybody, because you guys here in Virginia, you weren't too well advertised in England. So the joke is, it really is a joke. Church God people founded their church in a cornfield and hoped that nobody would see them. Got it? There's some truth in that. They say very much. But you don't want to do that. Paul is out there worrying about pleasing the Jews who keep the Sabbath. I'll keep the Sabbath if it helps me to win a Jew. Paul seems to care about winning people, doesn't he? That's impressing me more and more. Why don't you say, well, God take care of that, you know, let's do our thing. No. You are the only people we found in England, when we were in England, who actually didn't kick us out. I went to the Oregon Bible study on a Wednesday when we arrived in Oregon in 1981, 82, and there were probably 55, 60 people in that Bible study. They weren't going to fight us on the sleep of the dead. They agreed with it. Now, they weren't as aggressive with it, I felt from the beginning, because let me quote then from our good friend Seth Ross, who says that he grew up breathing the air of these truths, and therefore it didn't mean as much as it might. And we said, yes, but you didn't realize that everybody else was suffocating. Come on. That's the bullying. We did not grow up believing in his truth. I didn't know any of this stuff. So something, conversion or whatever you call it, something has changed us. But we're still listening. We check these truths about every 10 minutes every day. We go through, you Father, our monotheism in ourselves. You're the only one is true God. Jesus said is the most important thing. So we recite the Shema on Sundays. Are we wrong to do that? I fall asleep at night thinking that. You are the only one who is true God. And people want to argue with that. I'm tired of arguments. Jeff Fletcher is the only Jeff Fletcher in this room. Let's argue, let's not. What? What's gone wrong with the human race? Why are we so difficult to deal with? Anyway, that came out of that comment. All right, well, you're very patient to be here on Saturdays. Is that? Shouldn't you be keeping the Sabbath? No, you don't have to keep the Sabbath. Paul said, the Sabbath, that's the weekly, the annual festivals, and the new moons, every first day of the month, whatever, unless you keep a lunar rather than a Sabbath. I've got friends now who keep the lunar Sabbath, but not the other Sabbath, well, the solar Sabbath. Anyway, it's too difficult. Paul said that's a shadow of things to come. But the substance is Messiah. Jesus says you're Sabbath. Come to me, all you who are laden, and I will give you rest. I'll give you Sabbath. We didn't know that, and that cost me dearly. 14 years of my life. Now, I met my wife in that setting, because she came in through her uncle, to the Armstrong movement, so good things come out of those events. But don't tell me doctrine doesn't matter. What? I became impossible for my parents when I said, I'm keeping Sabbath, Dad. You pagan to me. I was like, it's all wrong. This idiot here was saying all that. Until the Christadelphians came along and helped us out. That's the story. I don't know any other story. I'm not lying to you. So it was a great joy for us to have Dale and Connie come in. It's like we sort of regrouping life again. It was a real thrill. So keep up the good work, Virginia. You don't know what's going here. This is amazing, actually, what's going on. Okay. Now we turn to Matthew 24. We've done the kingdom text in Acts, and we have 2 sessions according to your program. And my team is reminding me we've done enough on that. You've got them all memorized, right? If not, work at it and write to us and say you've had success with that. You've got the kingdom text in Acts. Now we turn then to Matthew 24. That's called the Olivet Discourse. The last sermon that Jesus gave, last of 5 blocks of teaching in Matthew, where it ends with when Jesus finished all these sayings. First one is in 7:28, and throughout the book of Matthew. Matthew is telling us, I think, that Jesus is the new Moses, the real Moses, the ultimate Moses, giving the new Torah of the new covenant. You got it? The new covenant. That's brilliant. We didn't know that. Now we understand it. Okay, so in the 5th block of the 5 blocks of Matthew's version of Jesus, he gives you the Olivet Discourse. That's the Mount of Olives, just east of Jerusalem, and he gives you a final sermon shortly before he died. And it's mass chaos out there. Mass chaos. And I want to start by telling you the verse that creates all the problems. You have Matthew 24 in front of you. You know that it's parallel with Mark 13, and you know that it's parallel with Luke 21. You put them all together. You need a harmony of the Gospels, fun, compare them all. But we'll do Matthew 24, that will do as well as anything. So Matthew 24, and I have the Bible with me here. All right. Matthew 24. I want to start with the verse that's caused all the trouble for people, shouldn't it? 24 and verse 29. What does that say? Matthew 24, verse 29. I'm sure it's French, but verse 29. What does it say? Anybody with a good reading voice? What does it say?
Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken.
Yes, and then they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with stupendous glory. That's the parousia. That's the Greek word for second coming. In Greek, the Greeks today call that the parousia. And the story is simply that in the 1st century, when the emperor came to inspect his troops, they minted a special coin for the celebration, and they called it the parousia. So the Christians said, well, that's our parousia, is when the Messiah comes and takes over the world, immortalizes the faithful of all the ages, including Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and all the faithful of all the ages, and gives them immortality, whereupon they proceed to rule the world with Jesus. What? Me? Yes, you! You are the royal family. I keep saying it to get the point over. You are the royal family sown with the parable of the sower, with the seed of immortality. How would you like to have the seed of immortality? That's incredible. That's not incredible. It's very much must be believed. So in Matthew 24:29, so they kindly read for us there, it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and then they will see the Son of Man coming with power and great glory. It goes on to say, he will send his angels, his servant angels, to gather together the elect into the kingdom. That verse is a problem for unbelieving critics. The word problem is the most frequent word in most scholarly so-called literature. Everything's a problem. So, you don't understand what immediately after means? Of course you do. If you look at the Word Bible Commentary, which is a state of art, good series if your children are growing up learning these truths, the Word Biblical Commentary, WBC, is the state of art, the best that Yale and Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge can produce on the Bible. And do you know the prodigious work that's been done on the Bible? It's terrifying. Absolutely huge. Whole lifetimes have been spent on it. What does the Bible say? Well, this is a problem verse for them, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Why is that a problem for them? Because poor old Matthew got it wrong. That's what the Word Biblical Scholar says. The Word Biblical Commentary says. Matthew edited that word immediately in there wrongly. So your job is to get behind what Matthew wrote wrongly and see what Jesus really said. That to me is an absolutely desperate approach to life. What if Matthew's right? What if Jesus is right? The problem with them is that they've been looking at the very temple buildings in front of them, haven't they? And he goes on to describe trouble in that temple, it's called destruction of the temple. And that led to a time of unique, great tribulation. Immediately after that great tribulation, the second coming. What are you going to do with that? Poor old Jesus got it wrong. That's what many scholars say. You don't know how evil, in a way, scholarship, unbelieving scholarship it is. So, what are we going to do with it? Well, here's the answer. It's not that hard. Jesus comes out and talks to the disciples about the temple. We're looking at the third temple. Third temple? Second temple. The second temple. First temple was built by Solomon, right? And the second temple was built, and then they come back into the land. So it's the second temple. They're expecting to build a third temple. They could do it very quickly. You know that. They've got all the instruments and the garments, even the musical instruments, ready to do that. That would be the third temple. That was the second temple. They're looking at those buildings. And the disciples are pointing out how magnificent they were. Josephus says that the buildings were extraordinary. And the disciples then ask about that temple. And Jesus goes on to describe trouble in that temple and a time of great tribulation. Not just tribulation, we did that in 14:22 of Matthew, of Acts, rather. Not just general tribulation, which you're all suffering. Everybody here could tell the story of tribulation and trial. That's part of the course, because you are the Navy SEALs of the kingdom. We want to be sure what's in your heart before we put you in charge of 5 cities, 10 cities. We want to know what's in your heart. Are you going to fall apart at the slightest trial? No. You're going to have to sit through death even. In the book of Hebrews it says, what if we were to neglect so great a salvation? That's in Hebrews 2. That doesn't sound to me like once saved, always saved. You know, you put up your hand. I went to a Get Saved meeting. It also way back. I put up my hand and I've been thinking about this for 20, 40, 50 years. What does that mean? Well, the evangelical system says, once you got saved, that's it. You couldn't fall away. That's a lie. You don't get the gold medal when the gun goes off at the beginning. Who'd go to the Olympic Games to see that happen? It's probably not many. I'm afraid it's tougher than that. Because some people, Jesus said in Luke 8:13, yes, Luke 8:13, some people believe for a while. Every time I come to an I sound, I'm tempted to go towards it. I must stop that. It's ridiculous. Some people believe for a while, okay, and then they fall away. Does that sound like once saved, always saved? Of course not. But somebody called V.P. Wierwille of the Way International taught the opposite of the Church of God. And said, you put up your hand and get saved, you're saved, no matter what you do. You could, I'm quoting now, you could commit adultery as long as you're speaking in tongues, you're okay. What? I'm enraged by that. I'm outraged by that. No, Jesus didn't say that. So you get started on the race that leads to the kingdom, obviously. That's in Matthew 24 then. The buildings are going to be destroyed. I don't think Jesus knew whether it was that particular set of buildings or some subsequent one. That's the value of you knowing that Jesus isn't God. He doesn't know. What he does know is the book of Daniel. And he knows that in the book of Daniel, there's a final time of great tribulation in which there'll be trouble in the temple. Immediately following that, Jesus will come back. I think that's the way Jesus is thinking. Because he knows the book of Daniel. He loved the book of Daniel. He found his own career there, didn't he? Didn't he call himself the Son of Man about 80 times? Bible? The Son of Man, the human being. Get it? Let's argue about the human being. No, he's a human being. Not just a mere man. Your friend goes, oh, I don't believe he's a mere man. What's a mere man? Is this a mere man here? No. The Son of Man, human being from Daniel chapter 7. So I advise you to fill your mind with the book of Daniel. It's extraordinary. Because that's the book that gives you the kingdom, perhaps more clearly than any other Old Testament book, isn't it? You know chapter 2, you do all that too. 2:44 says, in those days, God will set up a kingdom. Guess what that is? The kingdom of God. That's the gospel. God will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and it will destroy all previous kingdom and exist forever and ever. That's the gospel. That's the gospel of the kingdom. That's what Jesus got there. He knew he was the Son of Man. He knew he was going to rule the world successfully. Aren't you thrilled about that? There's so much heartbreak out there, isn't there? That's the vision. Without vision, the people perish. You know that. So try to develop the vision of a world of peace, where people are not going to build tanks and kill each other. Isn't that delightful? All of the heartbreak you see now, you and Jesus and God are going to fix it. Oh, poor little me, look at this, hold the door for 1,000 years. No, stop it. You're going to fix the world. The Bible is full of that. Because Adam was designed to rule the world. And Jesus, is the second Adam, says, I'm recruiting my executives of the kingdom. I get that. I didn't understand it before, but I do now. Okay. 24. Go ahead. Don't you see all these things, these buildings? I tell you, not one stone. It will all be destroyed. Actually, apparently the temple in existence then, the second temple, was not all destroyed, stone by stone. And Jesus said immediately after the time of trouble connected with the destruction of the temple, I'm coming back. Oh, said the Greeks said, poor old Jesus got it wrong. That's known as the delay of the parousia in the literature, the delay of the second coming. Jesus got it wrong. He pointed to those buildings and he said, they're all going to be destroyed. And immediately after, I'm going to come back. Well, he didn't. Oh, this gives the critics a hate. They love that. Because Jesus says they got it wrong, so I don't have to worry. But Jesus, he got it wrong. That's false. So how does that work? Well, in prophecy, you can have more than one fulfillment. You can have fulfillments that get increasingly great, but not always quite the same thing. For example, Jonah. Was Jonah alive in the whale? I think he was. Was Jesus alive in the grave? No. It's a pattern. We're very Western and rigid and wooden in our thinking. So we say, well, if it doesn't match exactly, it must be wrong. That's silly. What about the virginal begetting, we call it? The miracle worked in the womb of Mary. Doesn't Matthew refer to Isaiah 7? The virgin will conceive and bear a son. There was somebody in the time of Ahaz who had some sort of miraculous conception. I don't know if it was literally a virgin, but it's near enough for Matthew to say, hey, this is going to happen again. I love that. The Catholics get that right. They call that a fuller fulfillment. So you can have a pattern. You can look at those buildings in front of you and actually mean buildings that aren't even there yet. That's foreign to your Western way of thinking. That's the way they think. Then Jesus talks about the contemporaries of his, and he says, you guys standing in front of me, you're going to see the second coming. They didn't. It's you corporately, you and your group. Didn't Jesus say of the Pharisees that they had killed Abel? Did they? No. Jesus is very tough. You brood of vipers. That's a nice thing to say to people. You brood of vipers. You killed all the prophets from Abel onwards. They didn't, not literally, but in the West we might not understand that. So you corporately, we say you and all your ancestors, predecessors in the churches of God in Virginia. You. We wouldn't say that in our Western language, but they do. So Jesus, I think, is looking at those buildings. What he knows from the book of Daniel is that there's a 70th week, period of 7 years. That's not wrong. I think Dallas Theological Seminary got that part of it right, but then they confused it all by introducing a double second coming. They said, yes, there's a future 70th week, 7 years. But then they muddled it all up, in my opinion, by saying, you're going to be whisked off to heaven at the beginning of that 7 years. That's false. Jesus forgot to mention that. And when you're talking to friends about that, is the rapture, what they call the pre-tribulation, as to say pre-great tribulation rapture, they must understand that the word rapture, it must be defined. What do you mean by rapture? I believe in a rapture. That's caught up to meet the Lord in the air. You know that, 1 Thessalonians 4. When Jesus comes, he's going to snatch you up into the air to meet him and escort him, as I understand it, in the direction in which he's going himself. Just as I said before, the Queen comes and says, yeah, I got to the great head. Come down and sit and have British tea with us. That's what you do with distinguished visitors. Okay, so Jesus looks at those buildings. He knew that in the past, before AD times, there had been a Hitlerite figure in Jewish history. His name was Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a Hitler of the Old Testament. People have been so cruel. He actually recommended that women sling their dead babies around their necks and walk around the city. Ghastly, right? He would have murdered Jews by the million. He's a Hitlerite figure big time. So the Jews called him the abomination of desolation. BC, let's say 167 BC. He died, thank you. Final king of the north. Ghastly Hitlerite figure. They said that he was the abomination of desolation. Well, it turns out he wasn't. Not the one that Jesus was referring to. So Jesus sees a future abomination of desolation standing where he ought to. I refer for your notes to Mark 13:14 there. In the parallel, chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. In Mark 13, in verse 14, Jesus said, when you see, obviously future tense, when you, disciples, you didn't know how long that might be? When you see the A of D, it's called, the abomination, the revolting, disgusting thing standing where he ought not to. That's missing in your translation. There's a he there. It's not a standing where it ought not to. Standing where he ought not to. So the A of D is a person. It's a final wicked person. Paul referred to him in 2 Thessalonians 2. You know that. Some of them thought the second coming was about to come next Monday or already happened. And Paul is very keen to straighten that out. He says, oh, that's fine, you can believe whatever you want to, no problem. No, he passes on that very quickly and speaks then of a time of a bad guy standing in the temple. That's what I think we're looking for too. Now, you can correct me on all of this. We got this wrong, you pointed out. We're still listening carefully, but I do think that futurism, that's what this is called, that you're getting. I don't know what your pastor believes. He's a very patient man. You know, if he believes the opposite, he can straighten it out next Sunday. But futurism makes best sense of the evidence to me. That's to say that in the future there has to be a 70th period of 7 years. The last final 7 years. In that final period of 7 years, there would have to be a temple, literal building, which can happen actually very quickly. I don't know when. And in that temple, this wicked man of sin, otherwise known as a bad guy, I mean a Hitlerite character, he will stand. He will enter into that temple and sit in it, claiming to be God. That's a terrorizing person. So you're on the lookout for that, as I understand it. And we'll see. I don't know that friends that I taught at the college have changed their minds on those things. I think that they probably have, but that's fine. You can discuss these various views. But what then if you're looking for a temple with a man standing in it? A person, Mark 13:14. Jesus, or Paul, I should say, refers to you individually as a temple. Individually, you are temples of the Holy Spirit. I get that. Corporately, as a group, you are a temple of God when he introduces you. He doesn't introduce you individually or as a group as the temple. Now you can check me on that point. It's a grammatical point. But when he introduces the idea, a temple is what you are. Or as a group, you're a temple. But if he says the man of sin is going to stand in the temple, the language possibility is very strong that he's referring to a building. That's the strength of that. And he got it from Daniel. I think Jesus did too. That's what we're looking forward to. Looking forward to. Not with great joy, but that's what they're teaching. All right, so what happens then with the story as it goes on? What does Jesus first say? He warns. He says, beware of false teachers. What's a false teacher? I can tell you that. In your notes, you read 1 Timothy 6:3 and 2 John 7-9. 1 Timothy 6:3, Paul says, If somebody comes to you and doesn't bring the teachings of Jesus, watch out. You're being scammed, you're being taken in, and if you're not strong, you're going to fall for it. Don't do that. That's 1 Timothy 6:3. It's like a huge watchdog. I'm going to give you some good analogy here. Like a fierce watchdog standing there in 1 Timothy 6:3. If somebody comes to you and doesn't bring you the teachings of Jesus, watch out. You've been taken in. Don't go there. That's a huge warning. 2 John 7 to 9. 2 John, I think only one chapter. 7 to 9. Those verses. The same thing. It's all about Jesus. But not all about Jesus without his teachings. Got it? That's the story, I think, of the Abrahamic people. That's why you've been given much. And to all of us have been given much. Much is expected. Otherwise, we have not used our talents. I used to say to the students, week by week, what talent have you got that God didn't give you? You're all very talented in different ways, but what talent have you got that God didn't give you? Nothing. You've got those talents from genetics, from your family and all that. You must use the talents. You must do business with the talents. You must put the talents into a bank and make interest out of it. Otherwise, we're in bad trouble. Okay, so they look at those buildings, and Jesus simply says, when you see them, or Paul says, when you see the A of D standing where you are not to, Jesus says, when you see this person in the temple, what are you supposed to do? He answers, head for the hills. Run, get out of there. In Israel. He didn't say, expect to be lifted off the earth, but most of your evangelical friends believe that. It's called the pre-tribulation rapture. That could be a ghastly, misleading thing. They're all waiting there to be raptured to the heavens at the beginning of that 70th week. And it's not going to happen. They could lose their faith. Tracy Zikovic, there you go. Tracy Zikovic is very good on this point. She doesn't want people to be deceived by it. So, don't believe it. But what Jesus did say was, when you see the A of D, I'll call it, standing where he, Mark 13:14, where he ought not to, he mustn't be there, he ought not be there, then you are to flee to the mountains, if you happen to be living in Israel. Now why, if it's on the Sabbath, that's more difficult. It says, pray it shouldn't be in the winter or a certain season, and it wouldn't be on the Sabbath. Why? Because in Israel, on the Sabbath, the gates are closed. Much harder to get out. We saw in Israel a boy being stoned for bicycling on the Sabbath. We actually saw that. So it's hard to get out of Israel on the Sabbath. So he says, in Matthew, Paul is saying that in Mark or Luke, for Jewish audiences particularly, he says, pray it would not be on a Sabbath day. I get that. How does the story go on? I had cataract surgery recently. Don't put it off too late. My warning. The Russian surgeon said, Anthony, you really challenged me. Your cataract was thicker than most. Now, these glasses I used to wear, they work pretty well for everything. Now they work for reading, and they're terrible in the distance. So we'll get round to it. I'll get a pair of specs, which will be bifocal. Anyway, that's nothing to do with anything, except the analogy is this. Your friends have cataracts over their eyes. I didn't know any colors. Everything looked the wrong color. No. We watched those flowers when we went this morning in Virginia. The brightness was quite thrilling, actually. Anyway, don't allow cataracts to grow on your eyes too long. And turn to Matthew 24, so we read it exactly. Here we have it, Matthew 24. They look at the temple buildings, those very buildings, the second temple, and they ask about the buildings. He says, all going to fall down. All right, maybe it didn't all fall down literally, it doesn't matter. Any temple in front of you is the temple. You killed Abel, they didn't. Oh, yes, they did in Hebrew thinking, meaning you and your evil group before you killed all the prophets. That's just a Hebrew way of thinking. Makes it much easier to understand and explain it. Okay, what will be the sign of your coming, Parousia, here, verse 3, and end of the age? You see that that's the same idea, don't you? What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? Not what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age. It's one idea. And you understand that. The harvest is the end of the age. You know that. You see, you have the geography right here. In any other setting, you'd be shaking the fist at me by now. But you don't, because you've been taught by parents, at the end of the age, the present evil age of which Satan is the God, Satan is currently deceiving the entire world. What? The Christian doctrine said, well, you're the devil. What? We've been broken down, but we're ready to listen. Well, we've been wrong on everything. Come on, we've been wrong on everything. Let's look at that. After 2 years of them trying to persuade me that we were the devil, I couldn't get it. Little did they know, or did we know, we were being groomed in a way to meet people like you. And you said, of course, the devil is an external, wicked, fallen angel. Another subject. You're not the devil. It's not even good for you to think of you as the devil. It could lead to some psychosis. You walk around and go, well, I'm the devil. What? No, that's wrong. The devil is external to you. Oh, the Satan. Not a Satan. You can be Satans to each other, opposing, but the Satan, Ha-Satan with the article, or Diabolos, the devil. That's a very redoubtable, frightening figure who's in charge of this entire world. Almost, except for people who know the truth. That's why you're so unusual. Okay, so the story, as we know, he does start at the beginning by saying, many will come in my name, saying I'm the Messiah, and misleading many. That probably means many will come by saying, claiming to represent the Messiah. Very few people have actually come and said, I am the Messiah. It's almost unheard of. Probably he means many will come saying, I represent the Messiah, and will mislead many. So people come along and say to you, water baptism doesn't count. It doesn't matter. What? You're asking me to disobey one of the very basic Abrahamic things. If somebody comes and says to you, why don't you put your hand up and get saved? You'll say, well, no matter what you do. You can go on committing adultery, providing you're speaking in tongues. I'm quoting. And people say, well, what? No. That's the point at which you really get, your hackles up a little bit. Otherwise, it doesn't show that you love the truth. You don't care about the truth. You're not loving the truth. So loving the truth is very important. 2 Thessalonians 1:10, you have to have a love for the truth. I know you do. You're developing that love of the truth. Okay, so many will come in, and many will be scammed. And then you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. That doesn't tell us much explicitly. We've had wars. I was born just before the time of the Second World War. So my nanny, that's a resident nanny that my mother employed to help her, not a grandmother. The resident nanny and my mother were armed with garden rakes and shovels to fight the Germans when they came across them. We all but were done in by that. That was when Hitler nearly got hold of England, thanks to the work of exciting people like Churchill. We escaped. You must see some of that ancient history and see how meaningful that is. 5 minutes to go?
Yes.
Before we quit? Oh, we have to rush on. I have my team here not critics, I won't call them critics, but they're encouragers, exhausters. I don't know, time is running, this is just interesting to me. So what time are we quitting? 10 minutes? No?
5.
Only 5?
You can go longer.
We can go 5 minutes.
You can.
Let's just finish this. You're going to have fun telling other people about it. Okay, so you're hearing reports, I don't know that, but he does say that the end is not yet. What end are we talking about? The only end of the conversation. One of the things you cannot do in conversation is to switch the meaning of a word in mid-sentence. You get it? That's called equivocation. If you really want to get people in a mess, you change the meaning of a word. Like the word rapture now means the picture of rapture. Very confusing. So Jesus said, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, but that the end, what end? End of the age that they're talking about. Say amen. It's not yet. I get it, it's not yet. Okay, so what else does he say here? National, international fighting. Could that be the wars of the... I don't know. All these things are merely the beginning of birth pangs. That's an image from birth, right? I gather that women bearing children suffer birth pangs. This is the image here. The world is on the point of being born again. The world is, right? So it's going to suffer the convulsions and the pain and the agony of childbirth. That's a very Jewish thing to say. They all look forward to it, those who believe. These are only the beginning of both pain, verse 8. Then, are you ready for this? They're going to deliver you to tribulation. General tribulation. And some of them, they're going to kill. What? Not all of you. Are you ready to die for the faith? Right now, it doesn't seem very likely because the law would be at the door. If somebody tries to attack me for saying something that isn't orthodox, the police would be right here to defend you. Isn't that marvelous? You have such freedom here because of your famous amendments that you can say more or less what you like and get away with it. Okay, so that story then continues like this. At that time, though, in verse 10, many will fall away, they'll give up. What? Give up? How could they give up? I thought they got saved. Once saved, always saved is a falsehood, isn't it? I think that's a falsehood. Some will give up. They started, but they didn't run the race. So the once saved, always saved idea is very pleasant. Wouldn't matter what you do. You can commit adultery as long as you're speaking in tongues. I go giving you that awful quote because I want you to hear what's being said there. Don't follow that sort of teaching. Okay.
They always come back with, well, they weren't really saved.
Oh, yes. That's right.
They must not have been sincere.
Yes, they weren't really saved. They're just kidding themselves. Unfortunately, that system doesn't actually mean that. It says, literally, it wouldn't matter what you did after you got saved. I'm quoting the extreme point. They said, you can go off and commit adultery happily. If you're speaking in tongues while you do it, you'll be all right. That to me is so outrageous. I'm so troubled by that. I rush in to defend the Abrahamic people against that. Okay, so then, many fall away, some will die, and 11, many fake clergy, right? False prophets, people who are speaking in the name of Jesus but lying to you, will arise and they'll mislead many. Well, it sounds awfully difficult to that. Because lawlessness is increased, most people's love of the truth, that will be, will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, what end is that? It will be the end of his life, or the second coming, whichever comes first. If you stick it out to the end, this is tough stuff. But you're the Navy SEALs, aren't you? Give me a better analogy. God has got his finger on you. You are the elect. Whether you like it or not, God has appointed you to rule the world. Aren't they calling me? Yes. Oh, I will get it. Oh, you better have to be there. That's rather different from what some of you even have learned from other groups. Okay. Then he says in 14, this gospel of the kingdom, is that interesting? This gospel about dying and going to heaven? No. This gospel, the one we all know is the gospel about that kingdom, has to be preached in the whole wide world. And then the end will come. I got it. The end that they asked about, right? There's only one end that they asked about, the end of the age, the second coming. I don't know whether it's going to happen. I do know that with the internet, it can be done in a way that never was possible before. That's amazing. So this gospel about the kingdom has to be worldwide preached. And we've done fairly good work in Africa with the great help of Rebecca and Joe Martin. I went there alone actually in 94, was it 94 I think? And then Jim Madison got excited about that, and he went with Rebecca subsequently, many years, in Africa, went to Malawi. I just said, let's go to Malawi, let's try it. We set up something, and it's still going down there in Africa. Okay. So in 15 he says, therefore, as Hollis Parley used to say, right, then you always have to see what the therefore is therefore. It connects back with what you just said. This gospel of the kingdom would bring, and then the end will come. Yes, sir?
He was born in Browntown, Virginia, right?
Was he really? Okay. Yes, one of his sayings, his famous dicta sayings, was that you must see what the therefore is therefore. It connects. This gospel of the kingdom must be preached in the entire world, and then the end will come with therefore when you see. That's the end, right? When you see. I don't think you've seen this yet. The abomination of desolation, standing where he, in Mark 13:14, the parallel, standing where he ought not to, in a temple building. That can happen. I think we're looking forward to that. Okay, then what do? You flee if you're in Judea. If you're on the housetop, don't even go down to get your clothes. It's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it? Don't even go down to get your, go out down by the outside staircase. Get out of there quick. That's what it says, clearly. And what else? If you're on the housetop, not go down. Whoever's in the field mustn't turn back to get his clothes. Woe to you. That's a strong word. Woe, woe, woe to you. If what? Woe to you if you are pregnant at that time or nursing babies in those days. Pray that your Sabbath would not be on winter or Sabbath day, or flight rather, would not be on those days. For then, have you got it? Then, at that future time, there will be a tribulation which is great. That's only mentioned one other time in the Bible, like that, in Revelation 7:14. It talks about the great tribulation. 144,000 Jews, apparently, and people from all the nations, are those who will come out of the great tribulation. So your friends, the JWs at your door, can be challenged on this point. They say that they are not the 144,000, the ones at your door, but they're the great crowd, and they have come out of the great tribulation. How is that possible? How do you come out of a future event? You drop that little idea in their heads, you may change their minds. Lots of them at the door, they're very passionate about what they believe. How can you have come out of a future great tribulation when it hasn't happened yet? That doesn't make sense. Try them on that one. Okay, so it then says in 22, and that's those days that we cut short, no life will be saved alive, but for the sake of the Navy SEALs, the elect, the chosen ones. Whether you like it or not, you have been elected to rule the world. Do you like that? What me? Yes, you. You don't have a choice in that. Now, you could refuse it. I don't recommend you do that. God loves you so much that he says, I can use this person. Now, I'm going to test them and try them. But he's so keen on what you are, by way of tradition and genetics, whatever it is. It does say that when the word falls on a good and honest heart, you read that in the parable of the sower? There is such a thing as a good and honest person. The Bereans were more noble, liberal in the best sense, right? More open-minded, and they searched the scriptures daily. Isn't that nice? You get a little credit if you are a good, open, Berean, open-minded, open-hearted person. That's good. Okay. You know those verses well. Then he goes on with further warning, 23. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here's the Messiah, there he is, don't believe a word of it. In Luke's version, he says, someone says, let's go out there in the wilderness to find the Messiah. Let's go over here. No. Because the kingdom of God, when it comes, will be all over like lightning flashing from east to west. That verse has been mishandled badly in Luke 17. King James says, the kingdom of God is within you, in your heart. I used to ask the Salvation Army people, many years, waiting on the train station, as I'm writing on this kingdom of God topic, what do you understand about the kingdom of God? The only verse they knew was King James, the kingdom of God within you, it's in your heart. What? No. It's not even right. The question there, we won't do it now, Luke 17, they say, when is the kingdom coming? It's the future. When will the kingdom be coming? And he says, don't rush off here to find it. Don't rush off there to find it, because when it comes, it'll be like lightning all over. Not even I'm the king standing here. It's probably not even right. Professor from Yale helped us with that. It probably means don't look locally to the kingdom, because it's going to be a cosmic event, visible like lightning from east to west. That's what the kingdom of God is like. Going to be like. Okay, finishing off here. False Christ, and pass it on, 24. Fake Christ, fake preachers will arise and will show great signs and wonders. Listen, a miracle in itself is not proof that God is doing anything. Be careful. There are groups that trade on miracles. That doesn't prove anything if they don't have the truth. Because the devil can do miracles, apparently. I don't know the extent exactly, but that's rather a fair warning, rather an interesting warning. I've told you in advance, this is your Messiah speaking through these words. So if they say he's in the wilderness, don't go there. He's in the inner rooms, don't believe a word of it. 27. Just as the lightning comes from the east and the west. That's what the parousia, use that beautiful word, three friends will like it. The parousia, the second coming of Jesus, will be like. Wherever the corpse is, there the buzzards will be. Vulture is, a buzzard in England is a noble eagle, I'm pleased to tell you. In America it means a vulture. But whatever this means, it may be the body of the Antichrist being eaten up by vultures, maybe, a little unclear. Wherever the vultures are, they'll be centered on the Antichrist. Then the famous verse, right? Immediately after. Do you know what that means? Immediately after. Oh, poor old Matthew, we got really muddled up. This is what you read in the context. Poor old Matthew, you know what I'm talking about. Poor old Matthew. No, don't say poor old Matthew. Matthew, for me, wrote scripture. Immediately after that great tribulation, that wasn't 70 AD. Didn't happen. He's looking forward to a future great tribulation. Yeah? Immediately after that, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. This is a cosmic science. You know when Jesus died on the cross? The sun was dark. Do I take that literally? Yes, why not? What else am I going to say? I don't know exactly what that is. Astral fallings, whatever. I'll wait and see. I'm not fussed about it at all. I'll recognize it. I see it. But it must be some cosmic event. That's what he's predicting in verse 29. And then the sign of the sky, I don't know what that is exactly either, will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man, the human being of Daniel 7, coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And then he sends forth his angels. What do angels do? In Hebrews 2:14, they are liturgical servants. God has his whole army of angels working with you. You probably have a personal angel watching out for what you do. I wouldn't pray to that angel. Probably not. But you have an angel. God is well organized there. Sends his angels to gather the elect from the four corners of the earth. Then he does a parable of the fig tree. We have fig trees, you know that. When you see the leaves blooming, you know it's going to be summer. Probably not a reference to Israel, because Luke says, when you see the fig tree and all the trees. So it may not be literally Israel. Then you know all this is coming. And then he warns you. The flood. Do you know that Abraham was contemporary with Noah for 250 years? It's amazing, isn't it? They lived a long time in those days. So for about 52 years, Abraham and Noah were contemporaries. That's amazing. Here it is then, as in the days, how many people survived in the flood? 8. Jesus' name is 888. That's a good number to have. This doesn't sound like a pretty picture to me. It's not exactly comforting in the gentle sense. We've got to stop. My team is saying it's time to quit. So woe betide me if I don't listen to the team. So we'll wind this up. No, it's not that bad. Now, we'll finish with this 48. If the evil slave says inside, listen to the second coming, way down the line, I don't care, and you begin to beat your fellow slaves, then that master of the slave will come in a day when you're not ready. You're going to be taken over by the second coming. It's an awful day. So don't beat your fellow workers. I get it. It's amazing stuff, isn't it? You Adventists understand this. You get the feel of this. This is your Jesus speaking here in these amazing passages. So I think it's time for us to wrap this up now. John is very patient with me. I wasn't as well organized in every detail here. And so we did the 8 kingdom texts in one session and moved on to the next thing. So we're getting it over though. We're getting it done. It's all probably being streamed, a lot of it. So it's all recorded. And Carlos will talk briefly about our website, what we do, our focus on the Kingdom magazine this evening. Give you more information. Okay, John, thank you so much. Thank you.
We've got our annual meeting